Well, I'm embarrassed to say it, but I've never read Lord of the Rings. Just I couldn't get into it. I'm Tahereh Mafi, and I'm about to give Marie Claire a peek into my personal library. I am a writer, and my husband is also a writer, and between the two of us, we have amassed quite a collection. So today I'm going to try and narrow down many of my favorites to just a handful and share those with you today. I feel like it's kind of a cop-out to talk about the classics, but I genuinely love Dostoevsky. I always have. But The Idiot was somehow, it really stood out to me as particularly profound. It felt almost like reading a work of philosophy. I'm just a huge fan of the way Dostoevsky explores humanity and discusses humanity and fights for humanity. It's yet another book that has made me cry, which I'm beginning to wonder whether that might not be the metric by which I measure how much a book is worth to me. My favorite childhood book was probably The Prince and the Pauper by Mark Twain. I spent a lot of time fantasizing about the opportunity to switch places with a prince or a princess. It was escapist fantasy fiction at its finest. The process, you know, it's always difficult. It's always intimidating to be faced with a blank page. The more books I write, the easier it gets to remind myself that I've done it before and I can do it again. So I suppose there's some improvement. I want to take a quick moment to talk about some romance novels I love. In addition to all else, I read a great deal of romance. I love reading romance, and I feel like romance novelists and romance novels never get the recognition or the respect that they deserve, which I think is really unfortunate, because it is an industry dominated by women and written almost exclusively for women. I'm going to talk today about this book, The Happy Ever After Playlist by Abby Jimenez. I really enjoyed this book. I want to say that it's a story about grief, but it's so much more than that. The grief takes up a small portion of this story, but everything else about it is about love and the beauty of that experience. And it was just really well done. I really enjoyed it. Well, I'm very lucky that I have a built-in book friend in my relationship. My husband, who is also a writer, is also an avid reader, and I love discussing books with him. Switching gears a little bit, I am going to try now to talk about some of my favorite young adult novels in as brief a time as I can, because there's so many to talk about and never enough time to talk about them. Sky Hunter by Marie Lu. I love Marie Lu. I love everything she writes. Every one of her books is a knockout, but this one is my absolute favorite. Sky Hunter is set in a futuristic world. It's speculative fiction, I would say, about a young refugee girl who belongs nowhere, but still wants to fight for the land that she believes is her home. George Saunders is a really creative writer, and the stories he writes are so interesting and original. And The 10th of December, which is a short story collection, is no different. It's full of really hilarious and subversive and creative short stories. These are, they're like reflections on the world we live in through the lens of science fiction and speculative fiction, and I really love his voice and I love his thinking. I found the stories really thought-provoking, so I really enjoyed this. Where do I usually buy my books? I mean, 9 times out of 10 I get them from a bookstore. Love my local bookstores. Hard copy or e-reader? I always used to say hard copy forever, but sometimes when I travel, the Kindle really does come in handy. Emergency Contact by Mary H.K. Choi. I love Mary's writing. She's so talented, and this was her debut novel, I believe. She's written 2 more since then, and all of them are incredible. Just so real, so vivid. I love how she builds out her characters. Her voice is so compelling. Highly recommend. Infinity Reaper by Adam Silvera. This is the 2nd book in his fantasy trilogy. I'm a big fan of Adam Silvera. He is known mostly for his contemporary novels, but this is his first foray into fantasy, and it's a knockout. So definitely grab this, grab the book that came before it. I'm also a really big fan of this book, Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. This book is a beautiful exploration of war and immigration and motherhood and the trauma of war and immigration and motherhood, and it's just so beautiful and beautifully told, and yet this thick, dense book is so masterfully plotted that it moves at a really steady clip. I think I read this whole thing in a day. It was just really beautifully done, and it made me cry, so I highly recommend this book. Thanks so much for watching Shelf Portrait. My new book, An Emotion of Great Delight, comes out June 1st, and I hope you enjoy it. And don't forget to subscribe to Marie Claire. Bye, guys.